Hey everyone, welcome to the Underswell. I'm Derek Sabori. Thanks for being here. All right, the countdown is always gets me nervous, Matt. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Matt Raminick, I'm so stoked to have you. We've known each other for a while through our time at Volcom together. I've been watching you build Sunnyside, your agency, your creative and marketing agency, and I've been really digging all of your posts and just sort of your approach to running business and this journey that you've been on, being an entrepreneur and a leader. So I want to talk about all that. You cool with that? You ready for it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Tell me a little bit about, I guess summer. We were just talking about summer. Your kids are getting ready to go into summer. What's been going on lately? What have you been up to?
Well, I just started playing in a band again with some old friends. I'm super
cool.
stoked about that. Yeah, I had rehearsal last night, so I'm excited to get back behind the drum kit, which is cool.
Because I was going to say, you're a drummer.
That's right. Yeah, I've been playing drums my whole life and on and off, and I've got some really close friends that I've known for a really long time, and so yeah, we've been in bands together on and off for a long time. So yeah, I'm doing the commute back up to LA occasionally now again, which isn't the best thing ever, but hey, it's all good.
But it's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. Aside
What
from
do you
that,
guys? Real quick, I was gonna say, what do you guys play? What's your jam? You guys rock band?
This particular project is more. It's like more kind of rock. The lead singer plays like a synth keyboard, so it's kind of got that like kind of synth pop kind of element to it, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's I've always been in like punk bands and rock bands and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can touch on that and see how that has contributed to your career pathway here. You mentioned going up to LA. You're here near me. We're in Costa Mesa, California. We're here on the west coast of Southern California, right?
Yep.
Beautiful, sunny Southern California right now.
That's right. Yeah, it is sunny out there, right? Which is good.
Well, Matt, I want to talk to you today about a few things. I want to talk about, you have continued to tell your story about, getting laid off, becoming a blessing for you. I love that narrative that you've created and are sharing kind of openly and in a vulnerable way, which I think is great. Unorthodox career paths, the lessons that you've learned from being a business owner. Maybe talk about self-employment versus working for others, and your approach to building and growing a business and building a winning team. So, like I said, when we first met at Volcom, you were running Volcom's e-commerce kind of fledgling, kind of up and just started e-commerce program.
Yeah.
I know there's a bit of a career story there. There's a lot that's happened since then. So maybe tell us a little bit about your agency and what you guys currently do.
Yeah. So I'm the founder of Sunnyside. We're a marketing agency that works with lifestyle brands. We help them grow their e-commerce business and overall as a business. Our thing is really connecting creativity with business performance. And so primarily we focus on high-level strategy, digital strategy, brand strategy, creative and paid and retention channels to help the brand scale and build long-term customer loyalty.
What were you doing, Matt? What were you doing before you decided to start it? We'll dive into all that. I definitely want to get just kind of, what differentiates you guys and how you're building it. But what were you doing before you decided to start Sunnyside?
Oh, man. So I've worked brand side my whole career, actually, and I'm not ashamed to let people know that I don't have any agency experience, which I think actually has served me pretty well. And and I'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But yeah, so I started in music, and coming out of high school, I really just wanted to be a drummer and tour with bands and stuff. It's a hard road, right? And so like I ended up befriending some folks in bands that were doing okay, and I picked up a camera and started traveling and touring with folks and learning how to tell stories and hustle, right? Because it's a hard industry to get into. Yeah. At the time, I went to a design school, but I didn't really have like a clear plan. It was just a lot of drive. Like I knew I needed a backup plan, and I knew I needed some sort of a degree if music didn't work out, which inevitably it didn't, because the industry crashed like around like 2006, 2007 with the introduction of streaming music. It like killed the CD, right? So it was like a big shift. So I I turned towards my next, passion, which was surfing. And so I was lucky. I got a role at Quicksilver. I came on as part of the team that launched the e-commerce business there. I went on worked at Volcom, like you mentioned. I worked at a company called Mophie, my last role before I started the agency, I was at PacSun, overseeing e-commerce and digital there. In 2020, I got laid off, like you mentioned, and it was just before the pandemic. And so I saw it as a sign, and I had this idea to start a company and start an agency. I was moonlighting as a consultant and doing work on the side and nights and weekends. And then, but again, I didn't really have much experience and, no founder roadmap. And so I think that actually kind of helped though. Right. And so, it's like I said, I think we've talked about this before, but like if I had known what I didn't know, I might not have done it. So,
yeah, and I want to. That's a good. I mean, that's a good place for me to jump in because I some of my next questions are what prepared you for this. It sounds like the roles prior to that, but I also wonder, was it COVID that kind of convinced you? Like, were you feeling up against the wall because you were building a good resume, right? Quicksilver, Volcom, Mophie, PacSun. You could have easily, you would think, but timing was different. Just gone on and continued to build that reputation and that career. Mm-hmm. So was it that you were feeling like your back was up against the wall, or you just alluded to it? Had you always sort of had an entrepreneurial itch that you're like, now's the time, I got to go for this?
I really did. Yeah. And I can remember a long time ago, just really kind of wanting, there was this allure or this idea of doing something on my own and building my own thing and sort of carving a path that way. I didn't know what it was. Like it was at first ages ago, it was, I want to start like a production company, right? And I want to like send people out on tour with bands and film content and stuff like that. Or eventually it was like, I want to start a creative studio and, do creative work. So it was always something, but never did I have the balls to do it, right? It was I was fortunate that I had a good career going and it was going fine. And so there was never like a clean jumping off point until right before, like as when COVID hit and, I got laid off from my role. And so that was really kind of the thing that gave me the push, And so I think the stuff that prepared me was really just my creative roots and sort of the desire to figure things out, right? It helped to sort of shape my point of view. And I think being on the brand side first and working with lots of agencies, because in many of my roles, I was the one who was part of the decision-making process of what agency to bring on, sat through all the pitches, managed the agencies day to day. I got to see what they did right and wrong, and figure out from my own point of view what clients truly value. And every pivot had kind of like an element of fear to it, but it's also the allure of growth and sort of leveling up that I think was part of it for me.
Yeah. Well, I've got two questions based on that. One, sort of where do you think that came from inside of you, regardless of the fear, not having done it, but knowing that you had these transferable skills that you were, acquiring. What helped you kind of tip the scale and say, I'm going to go for this? I know you're always talking about your family, time with your family. I think you had a conversation with your wife about this, but what was it in you that said, we got this, let's go do it?
It was funny. I walked out of the building that day when I got laid off and I was like, I couldn't contain my joy. It was like I sort of knew right then and there. I mean, I was fortunate because I was able to walk away with like at least a little something to sort of keep us afloat for a while. But I mean, it was really, my wife comes from, fun fact is that she worked in the music industry too. She was a booking agent, and that's how we met. And so just like me, she moved across the country on her own without much of a plan for the job. And so we have this sort of shared personality trait in which we've taken some leaps without certainty, but with conviction, right? And so it was a lot of support from her. We had, though, a new baby and a 3-year-old at the time. So
yeah, that's scary.
It's scary. And so, but I had a lot of grit and, I sort of trusted my gut. And I think she saw that. And I had been talking about it for a while. And like I said, I'd already been doing a bunch of work on the side and was already sort of subcontracting out some of it to other people. And so it was inevitably just an evolution of that. And so it wasn't just I'm going to do this now. And it was like the start that day. It had been leading up to it by that point. And so it sort of felt like the next natural step.
Yeah. I can picture you in the parking lot, just like, yes, like it's go time.
Yeah.
I read that you've said you basically took everything you felt frustrated by as someone on the inside, and you just mentioned this, but all the points of friction as well as all the things that worked well, you came up with a plan to build a company that disregards the typical agency playbook. So maybe tell us a little bit about how Sunnyside is different, why you decided to kind of try to disrupt things.
Yeah, like I said, I worked with lots of agencies, really big ones and really small ones, and kind of looked at all the things that I was stoked about and what made me feel frustrated. And so there's probably 4 or 5 things brands call us to do. And one of them is that I've built a team primarily of former brand marketers, right? Mm-hmm. And we have a couple folks who are come from an agency background, which it gives a good kind of balance. But we tend to look at the brand's overall goal as our benchmark, right? We sometimes get called in to do 1 or 2 things, and that might have a very specific goal or KPI attached to it. But we always ask, like, what's the overarching business objective? Like and I always ask, like, what if we were to high five in a year from now, like what would have had to happen, right? And so a lot of times that's different from what gets put into the RFP or the brief. And so we tend to look at that as like our North Star. We think that, our principle is very much great marketing it connects creativity and business performance, because the creative is such an important lever. And particularly nowadays with channels like Meta, the targeting options have become really limited, right? And the creative is the targeting now.
Yeah.
And so that's a big component of it for us. We don't typically chase metrics like ROAS as or like look at a channel in a silo. I think for us, we're more interested in spending a client's budget profitably, where we like to look at customer lifetime value, brand longevity, and loyalty, which is such an important component of it. We spend a lot of time, or our agency spend a lot of time acquiring new customers and spending money to acquire customers, but there's not a whole lot of thought typically as to what happens after that. And so we are really interested in what it takes to create a brand advocate, right?
Yeah.
The other things is that we have only a senior level team. We don't have a B team. There's no offshore resources, and those people show up every day. They're the ones that are coming to the meeting. They're on the emails. And so it's the analogy of like your car breaks down, you take it to the shop. You want to talk to the mechanic, right? You don't want to talk to the front desk guy or girl. And so we try to take that mentality. And then, the last thing is just the creative piece again. It's not just like a cost center, right? It's the growth engine, and when aligned with the strategy, and that's when kind of the magic starts to happen.
Yeah. You've had your agency for now almost 5 years. So congrats on that. And I feel like, I guess from me watching it from the outside, it's had great growth. And I think it feels like the footprint is, that's a pretty quick amount of time, I think, in building a company, building a brand, building a reputation. You just posted all your great NPS scores and what your customers are saying. What you're saying then is resonating and working with customers, right? Mm-hmm. So you're building good partnerships with them. So what's your strategy and philosophy, I guess, as you mentioned this sort of senior level team, but as the agency grows and you're bringing on new people, how do you go about growing the agency? Do you like the size that you're at? Will you continue to add new people? What's next for you?
That's a great question. We're trying not to be the biggest. We want to be sort of small but mighty. Like we're trying to take the approach of growing sustainably, because at the end of the day, we like to clock out. We want to go spend time with our friends and family, and we don't want to be defined by our work. And so, for better or worse, if that limits our growth potential longer term, that's okay. I think like we would much rather work with a tighter group of really great clients that we're really excited about and they're excited about us than go for, fast growth and take on anything that we can. And so I think that part of that is just really looking at it from the lens of like, okay, what's like a reasonable goal? What's it going to take us to get there? And then bring in a few new clients at a time that we feel really good about, while also, like you mentioned, taking care of the ones that we work with and looking at those as at a minimum about a 5 to 7 year engagement, right? Like we're not in it to just kind of come in and out. Like we definitely look at these as longer term partnerships.
Who's your ideal client? Like what's their profile? And I guess, is it easy to find companies and brands that align with those values that you have, right? When you're like, hey, we want to clock out. We're not going to be, rushing through everything on the weekend. Like, are you able to find clients that are like, yeah, us too, we're cool with that? What's the matchmaking like?
Yeah, I'd say our ideal client is it's a brand they're doing between 10 and $100 million in revenue a year. And I think for us, it's about relationships. It's really, you're ultimately supporting this person or people in helping them achieve their goals, right? It's so we try to look at it from the sense of, okay, if our ultimate goal is to help them achieve their business goals, then what's the next step? The next step is getting that stakeholder promoted. Like, can we offer a level of service? Can we help them achieve their goals so that they come to us and say like, hey, I just made VP, or I'm moving up. So that to me is always in the back of our minds, and the back of our team's mind, and thinking through what it really means to be a good partner. And it boils down to hospitality and service, level of service. I think that's crucial. And so anyways, yeah, to answer your question, I think we try to look at, can we work with these folks? Do they trust us? Because it's mutual, right? Like we don't want to come in and be kind of always on our heels, but vice versa. We don't want to enter a situation where the client or the brand is not prepared for some of the things that we want to do, because we might offer suggestions or strategies that might feel uncomfortable at first, or might be different than what the normal sort of agency playbook might be. So there's a little bit of finesse involved, and I think it's a relationship game, though, at the end of the day.
Yeah. You mentioned service and hospitality. Did you ever work in the service or hospitality industry?
I worked at Pizza Hut for 2 years. Yeah.
I feel like...
so I don't know if you count that. I was never like a server or anything like that, but that's about as close to it as I got.
Well, I feel like that needs to be a mandatory question on the show now, because I'm a big fan of working in the restaurant industry. There's just so much to learn in that fast pace, getting it delivered, having customers say, "Yep, thank you, this is exactly what I ordered."
Right.
Your tickets are piling up. Your people are at the count. You're just like but you learn so much. But it's all about, like you said, all about hospitality. I wonder, I guess I want to move into the kind of the stage of getting some advice from you and kind of getting a sense of what things have been like. I love that you mentioned, when you go to start your work with your clients, that you say, what would a high five in a year from now look like? So it seems like you're always working with the end in mind. When you built this company, what do you appreciate most, I guess, now about being self-employed? Did you go into this knowing that this is exactly what you wanted to build, and we're going to build it this way? Did it evolve a little bit? But what's been good about having your own company?
I mean, I'll be honest, I love the freedom. You know, at the end of the day, it's nice to be able to say like, hey, as someone who values and advocates for taking time for yourself, family and friends, and making sure you have space for that, like just being able to do that, it's like, and advocating for that on behalf of the team as well. And so that's a big piece of it. But balance doesn't always equal hours, right? It requires some intentional energy. You have to sort of set yourself up for that, because if you just kind of clock out every day at noon and go for a surf, then things are going to suffer as a result. So there definitely has to be a balance to it. And some days you might have to work late. Like you might have to pick up the phone on a Friday afternoon and chat for a couple hours with a client who's, might be having a rough week. So anyways, I think it's a balance. But I do love, I'm a homebody. I like being at home. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. How do you build a culture like that, because I do think it's one thing to say, hey, work-life balance, but getting everybody on board, especially if you've got kind of a young, eager team, they're early in their career, they're hustling, they want to show up, they're like, I want to work more,
Yeah.
How do you get, it's like, you guys, no, this is kind of how we do, because if everybody, I guess, is not taking advantage of that, then that can cause some friction and tension, I think, sometimes too, because you're like, well, wait, how are they doing this or that? And I'm not. It's like, how do you make it so that everybody feels that safety to go, yeah, I'm intentionally taking time for myself, like Matt said.
It's so hard to build culture in a remote environment. I think that a big piece of it is just checking in and really being intentional about communication and when and how you do it. And I think that, yeah, when it comes to younger talent, I think that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being a leader, being a business owner, to mentor young talent and really kind of show them the way, but also lean into their strengths. And if somebody is a workaholic and loves to work and loves the job, then hey, that's cool. Like that's I'm appreciative of that. And I used to be the same way, and I can be the same way. Like if there's something going on and we need all hands on deck, then yeah, I'm there. We're all clocked in. So it really just comes down to what each individual's goals are, and trying to really kind of tap into what those are and nurture those and try to help them realize that and help sort of get them where they want to go. But yeah, it's an ongoing discussion about how to continue to build culture in a setup like this, because we don't have an office. We probably won't ever have an office. I think that it allows us to invest in our team, which is our biggest investment, and not have the overhead of, a building somewhere, which, has its pros and cons too. But we do try to make a point to get together as much as possible. We're fortunate that a large contingency of our team is based here in Southern California. Yeah. So we try to meet up whenever we can. I've met with a couple team members yesterday just to get coffee, hang out. We try to get together and work, just remotely together, and for no other reason but to hang out in a room, because something always comes of it. You might have a conversation, or just have a good hang. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Do you ever, when you're bringing on new members onto the team, do you ever ask them that same question that you ask to your clients? Hey, in a year from now, in 3 years from now, what does it look like if we give each other a high five?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's important because, somebody might be applying or wanting to come on board for a particular role or job, but see that as like a stepping stone. And so I try to understand, like, well, yeah, it's kind of that cliche question, the interview question of like, where do you want to be in 5 years? But there's some validity to that. And I think if you go a layer deeper and you say like, hey, like where would you be if in a year's time, in 3 years time, that would make you feel successful or in your career path? And I think that I look for specific traits in people, and one of them is curiosity. And I think that folks who have that sort of trait, they sometimes don't have an answer for that, and that's okay. And I think that as long as we're doing our job as leaders on our team and helping them sort of cruise along and, sort of being more of a guide than like, the hero at the end of the day. So I think that's kind of the best we could do in those situations when someone is like, I don't really know.
Right. I like the idea of being a guide. So such a good point. What then? Let's flip the coin here a little bit then, and because there's pros and cons to being self-employed, having your own, comes with a lot of perks, but at the same time, it's a lot of pressure. So are there things that you miss about being employed by somebody else?
Oh man.
Which list is longer?
Yeah. I've been super fortunate to work at some great companies, not without their issues. But I miss the culture of being in the surf industry at its peak and traveling to cool places, and the camaraderie and the singular focus of one brand, and sort of really giving my all into that. And
hang on, is this the time for reminiscing, like on the on the surf industry and the action sports industry that was?
No comment. It's such a sad bummer situation with what's kind of unfolded the last few months. But I mean, for me though, I look back at those days of like great fondness, and I still have such close friends from that time. And another big piece of it was just the amount of talent and like amazing talent. I was so fortunate to work with so many inspiring, talented people, who I'm so grateful for the relationships, because as the agency was getting going, and even today, a lot of our clients, our early clients, and still today, the ones that we have and that are coming through, are folks that I worked with at some point. They've gone on to do their own thing or become leaders at other companies. And, I always say, like, it's cliche, but don't burn a bridge. You never know sort of where that will come back around.
Yeah. And it's like the power of your connection, right? It's like, as I've heard it said, your net worth is your network, your network is your net worth kind of thing. So
it's so true.
Well, Matt, let's take a quick break real quick, because this will be the time when I edit this, that I go through and I mention to people that if they want to be on the show, to reach out to me, that if they want their profile built to showcase their talent in a podcast format, they'll reach out to me, etc. Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the episode. I'm always so inspired and motivated by these career stories, and I hope you are too. And I wonder, are you looking to be featured on the show? Each week, I chat with an invited guest who is an expert in their space or who has compiled a stellar resume. If you fit that description and are interested in being a guest, just hit me up at Derek Sabori on LinkedIn. And here's something else to consider. This show platform is for hire. I build professional and personal podcast profiles for people who are looking to stand out in a crowded marketplace. You've heard my guests say it's your personality, the way you connect with people, and your ability to relate and communicate that will help land that next job, client, or customer. So let's show off your personality, not just your resume, and let's do it on a podcast. Head over to theunderswell.com to learn more. And now back to the show. We're back. Matt, thanks. I want to shift tone a little bit and ask maybe for you to give some advice, if you would. Give some advice to someone who's looking to build their own business from scratch. I think you've gone through a whole bunch of what it takes, but what should somebody really be on the lookout for if they're like, hey, I want to go out on my own, build an agency? Because there is a laundry list of things that they need to account for, right? Whether it's having the finances in place, having your runway, getting your talent, having your network. So take it from here. What advice do you got for people?
Yeah, just be relentlessly curious. And keep showing up. It's going to be hard some days, and some days you're going to say this is the best thing ever. And so it's just important to keep going. There's never a perfect time. There's never like an opportune time to do it. And so one of the biggest things I tell people is just start before you're ready. And another big one is just make sure it's something you love. I think the biggest pitfall that new business owners run into is they're not prepared for all the things that come along with owning a business that maybe you're not used to, and you find out quickly you don't love. It's like, it's the bookkeeping, it's the HR, it's the hiring the team, it's the paying the bills and marketing, content. You learn real fast that you need all these things, and I think that you have to sort of be prepared to delegate quickly and get help. There's a really good book called Who Not How, and it's all about, if you have an idea or if you want to do something, it's not really always about figuring out how to do it yourself. It's about finding someone who knows how to do it and having them help you do it. So that's a big piece of it, I think. And another one is just finding a niche and try to be the big fish in the small pond. And the last one is, I think, build something that you would want to hire. Right. Think about if you were your client, or if you were going to hire a company or something, what would that look like? And what would be sort of the traits or attributes of that sort of business?
Yeah. I think one thing people often maybe underestimate as well is just maybe how long it takes to build a company. What's your advice? How long do you need? How long should somebody plan for before you're like up and running? I know that can vary all over the place, but
Yeah.
what's a typical time frame you think for that?
I mean, if you're trying to become the next NVIDIA, like, I don't know, there's different scale, right? So and it depends too, I think, a lot on what your ultimate goal is, right? Like I've bootstrapped the whole thing myself and have built it sort of brick by brick. And so I knew that this was going to be a long-term process and was okay with that. So as far as the timing goes, it really just depends on what your ultimate goal is, and scaling fast can have its own sort of challenges, and so can going really slowly. So I think the advice I would give is just try to, just think about what your comfort level is with the size in which you will be able to make a living off of, right? And so that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, I often think of it, for you as a musician, I wonder if you have this thought go through your head as well, but I often look at building companies or your brand as like a band, where sometimes bands are like 10-year overnight successes, right?
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden everybody's talking about them, like they've been grueling through small clubs and playing to audiences of 10 and 15 people for the last 7 or 8 years, and then all of a sudden they're this hot new band, and by then you're exhausted with those songs. Is there some truth to that?
It's so it's so funny. I always make that analogy. It's like trying to win at being a business or running or growing a business is it's really similar to trying to make it as a musician or a creative or any of that kind of stuff. I think like there's some luck involved, but there's also it's all about relationships, and it's not always who but it's what you're capable of doing as far as building relationships and nurturing them, and building trust with people and having them trusting that you're partnering with the right folks, and then seeing where that can go. I think, as someone I've grinded it out as a musician, but also have worked with lots of musicians who worked really hard, had way more success than I ever did, and still ended up, taking a 9 to 5 years later. So there's a lot of parallels for sure.
What about the creative sort of space, marketing and creativity on its own as a skill set or a niche or a category for work? What do you want people to know who want to get into that space, or they think they do? How has it changed? How is it changing? Where is it heading? AI, everybody's talking about losing jobs, not being able to get jobs, AI automating everything, especially kind of, I think, in some of the creative space as well, whether it's copywriting or coming up with logos and graphics. What's your take on that? What should people know as they try to enter into that space?
Yeah, we've been in kind of an era of specialists, right? And I come from a time when it was kind of uncool to be a jack of all trades, but that's what I am. I know a lot about, or I know a little about a lot, and so I think that one of the biggest things these days is to learn to think cross-functionally, right? Like think, connect the dots between the strategy, the data, the creative, performance, all that stuff is connected, right? Like nothing really lives in a silo. And so, I think that trait, that sort of generalist trait, will serve you really well, actually. It's not something to kind of shy away from. The other thing I think is important is that the best creatives now and the best marketers now are part analyst and part storyteller, right? And that kind of leans into understanding the why of something, and whether and if something worked, why did it work? If it didn't work, why? What can you do about it next time? With AI, it's like we're living in the next industrial revolution right now. It's so exciting. And also just nobody knows. It changes every day, right? But I think my point of view is that it's not a threat. It's a tool, right? It's another tool. It's a horizontal layer. It's in everything, or it will be in everything. But it's the craft that still matters. I think you still have to have a skill set of a craft and be able to excel at that. And so the AI component isn't going to necessarily replace that piece of it.
Yeah. And I think if it comes close to doing just that, to replacing it, I think what you've been talking about the last few minutes, though, is your differentiation as in terms of how you treat your customers, relationships first, your personality, your work ethic. It's like maybe there's, similar work that can be done across the board, but what really sets you apart is that personal touch that AI doesn't generate, right? So you kind of position yourself for that. I wonder, Matt, if you look back kind of on the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, do you ever kind of take stock of like lessons that you've learned? There's always opportunities for us to kind of go, okay, I'm not going to do this next year, or as I build the next 3 years of my, the company. Any lessons that you've sort of learned along the way that that are shared across all the different things that you've done?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is, at least for me, is that everything takes longer than you think.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Sometimes you just have to be cool with it, and it can be draining, and it can be hard, and it's okay to take a break and, give yourself some room. I think if thinking about starting a business or becoming a founder, particularly if it's something you've never done before, is to just stay in the discomfort as long as you can until you start to figure out, right? And you start to, you'll start to notch a few wins and go, okay, I think I'm getting this now. The next is just like, I don't know. I think it's, you can't really build trust with clients or your team without clarity and consistency, but that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working in a remote environment. It's really easy to sort of tune out and tune into your own sort of zone and do your thing. But you have to remember that, you, especially as a leader, it's so important to keep everyone in the loop and make sure that everyone understands what's going on and get them excited about it. And also, hey, this isn't going well, and here's what we're doing about it, right? And so I think that's hard to do, and it's hard, especially as leaders, sometimes to admit when things aren't going well and that it's your fault, which sometimes it is, and that's okay. I think the next one is just I don't know, that the hiring piece isn't like, as you're building a team, I think one of the important things is it's not all about capability. I think there's, someone might have a really killer resume, but it's about someone who has shared ownership values, curiosity, grit is a big one, right? And then just, that just is sort of that mindset, right? And so I don't know. For me, I've always sort of, I don't know, whatever. If you can go out and like have a beer with somebody at the end of the day, then there's a good chance that you're going to be able to work well with them. So if they have the skill set, if they have those personality traits, and then you can find yourself grabbing a coffee, grabbing a beer, whatever. I think that's something that is important too. So as far as lessons go, those are some of the bigger ones, I think. Could probably go on, but those are probably the key ones. Yeah,
no, those are good. And one of the words I wrote down as you're talking, I just can't help but think of the word relentless. Like, you just got to relentlessly show up. You got to be. It's all these
so
R's. Yeah, relentless relationships. You've got to be relatable and just and ready for what's coming at you. I like that you had written, I think on the website somewhere, or maybe in LinkedIn somewhere, you said, nobody was going to do anything for me. Nothing in my life has ever been a given. So I was hoping you could unpack that for me a little. What when you hear that, what does that mean to you?
I was coming of age at a time when information wasn't really readily available, right? I'm like an elder millennial. And so like I grew up without like internet and phones until I was 15, 16 years old. And so, and even then it was very much in its infancy, And so we had to figure things out for ourselves. It wasn't like we could just fire up ChatGPT or like go online and learn about something. There was no YouTube, there was nothing, right? So it was very much like, okay, you want to do this? Figure it out, And so I had to figure out things as I went along, particularly with some unconventional career choices, right?
Yeah.
Like with things like music or going into design and going into building websites. My first early jobs were building websites for people, and I was doing some freelance work. And I honestly, it sounds crazy, but I taught myself how to code with HTML. I taught myself how to use Photoshop, and it all just came from just tinkering, right? And playing around with stuff. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me. And I'm actually grateful for that, because it's a character trait that I'm that I appreciate now. I think I maybe didn't as much back then, or, when I was younger, but now it's definitely something that I think has served me pretty well.
Well, you're speaking my language, because it sounds you're a Gen X adjacent is what
Yes.
it sounds like.
Yes.
Right. And I always look at, I'm so stoked, at being a Gen Xer and kind of growing up in the age we did, because like you said, we grew up, we got far enough in our lives without all of the things, but we were still young enough to be able to like fully, mostly adopt them, be able to use them. Even as we tail off into AI, still at that zone where it's like, okay, I can fully incorporate that. What a great, to be able to straddle both sides of the fence, I think is really good.
Yeah.
That leads me then to my next question, with kind of looking then at younger professionals today. I always kind of like to juggle or talk about the differences between generations, but what are you seeing in younger people, younger professionals that you like, and that you're like, ooh, that's really good? And is there anything too that you're like, I kind of wish they would do this or that? What are you seeing out there?
I think that with the age that we're living in, and the amount of information, and with social media and everything else, kind of, there's so much readily available information that I think it's falsely sort of created this perception that success can happen quickly, and that you can make tons of money, like through A, B, and C, right? Just do this and you'll be successful. So I think that that's the thing that kind of worries me sometimes, is that there's really, in most cases, there's not like a quick path, or there's not a quick scheme that will get you there. And it does take work, and it does take a little bit of luck. And so that's one of the things I think that is kind of worrisome.
Work, luck, and time. And so again, you're nailing all of my points here for me, Matt, because that's why I started the show, was because I was getting so frustrated with watching, admittedly, even in my household, young people watching things, hearing things. I'm like, that is not, and I heard this great saying, I can't remember who said it, but there is no getting rich. There's only people getting rich telling you that you can get rich quick. It's like,
so true.
It just takes time. And I knew that. I'm like, okay, I know I'm not the only one. It takes us 20, 25 years of building careers, and with life expectancy getting longer, our careers are even longer. Mm-hmm. So this is a long game, and the chances, going back to either being a pro athlete or bringing a band that makes it, like that really makes it, they're very small. Like, so I hope, young people, I would love to see you become a millionaire in 6 months, but it's like, most likely you won't. So get ready for a long haul, starting, stopping, failing, building, learning, trying again, iterate. So I love that you said that. I think it's really important. And it's like work, it's like the equation of work, luck, and time, like all those things come together, to your point. So yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Anything to add to that?
No, I think, conversely, like the thing that I feel sort of excited for with the generation now coming of age and experiencing what they are, is that there is a ton of information available that you can actually learn a skill on your own. Like you can figure things out pretty quickly. And so I think that is, something that excites me. And I think that when used correctly and as a tool, and right, like as a component to everything else that we're talking about, then that's pretty cool. And I think that folks who I really actually enjoy when I see folks on our team, for example, it's like seeing some younger talent that I like watching them be able to solve a problem through either technology or tinkering with something or stumbling on something. Well, I had a team member yesterday just call me out of the blue and was like, I think I like cracked the code on something. Like, do you have a minute? And I'm like, yes, I do.
Yeah,
And so, and it was cool. It was like this really rad conversation. It was like, I don't sort of know where this is going, but it's really exciting. And I'm like, just keep going. Like, just keep it going. You know, what do you need? You know, and so that I think is what sort of gets me excited though.
That's great. We've got just a couple more minutes here, Matt. I want to kind of get you to see if I can sort of drill this down to give us sort of 3 takeaways, if you will. You've listed a whole bunch of different good things in here, but how do we wrap this up for somebody who's early in their career journey? You got a 3 bullet point, to-do list for people who are getting started. What are your takeaways for them?
3, help other people first. Always be building trust. Be humble, but be bold when it matters.
Those are good. That's solid. And I feel like you just came up with those right off the top of your head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And that's the stuff that I try to keep in mind and has served me well. I think like being reliable, you could as a 4th one is probably right. So
yeah. A lot of R's back in my show notes.
Yes.
We're going to be putting a lot of R's. All right. Well, we'll get to the end here. I do want to know though, I guess, Matt, before I give you I like to give my guests sort of the soapbox, if you will, for a shout out or a call out, talk about something that you're really stoked on or that you're not so stoked on that you want people to hear about. But that's going to be yours right after you tell me though, what's the future of Sunnyside? What's next on the horizon? Any cool things coming up that you want people to know about? Give us a little plug.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. We're making some great hires. We've just brought on a couple folks that I'm really excited to have join the team, and we just have a lot of runway right now, and we're doing good work. And the clients and the brands we work with are happy, and in such a challenging, sort of weird time economically and from a broader standpoint in terms of headwinds and just everything out there. I'm really proud of our team and with what we're doing and able to accomplish right now. And so that's getting me really excited. So the next 6 months, a year, I think is going to be a really pivotal moment for us as a company and too as a leader for myself. I think, I continuously am just trying to learn and figure things out as we go along. But, I'm fortunate to have a lot of support and building a team around me who are helping us get there. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
We'll put your link to your LinkedIn, obviously to the agency in the notes, but I love just sort of like I mentioned at the top of the show, your candid approach, your storytelling approach to what you're going through, how you're building it, what you're thinking. You've got some great tips. You've got this nice balance, I think, on your LinkedIn page, just to sort of give me some tips, talking about the business, personal journey, a little bit of everything. So good job on that.
Thanks.
Soapbox moment, Matt. What do you want to end this? What should we go out with? Take it away.
Man. Well, yeah, shout out to my wife. She's my biggest source and inspiration, support, and perspective, and keeps me humble. My team, they have really helped to shape the company to what it is, and especially the folks who have been with me since the beginning, which is something that I'm extremely grateful for. I think one last thing for me is just the hustle grind mentality. I think it's kind of tired. I think we're like coming into a time when it's like we're seeing a lot of the, like anti grind kind of stuff, and which I think is important. And it's more the longer term path. And so I don't know. It's like it's more for me about working smarter and more meaningfully and taking that road, which might be longer, but I think it will serve you better in the long run.
I love it. It sounds like people are lucky to work for you, Matt, and your clients are, I'm sure, as well, are lucky and probably stoked. So you guys go check out Sunnyside Marketing Agency and go check out Matt Raminick's LinkedIn page. Get all the story there. But Matt, thanks so much for taking time with us and sharing some advice and some insights. I really appreciate it.
It's awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what you heard, be sure to check back weekly, subscribe to the show, and if you want to be featured on the show, come hit us up at theunderswell.com. We'd love to hear from you.